The nightmares had become a constant in Anakin Skywalker's life. Every night, the same disturbing visions invaded his mind. Padme suffocating, her face contorted in agony, her hands extended begging for help that never came. The young Jedi would wake up covered in cold sweat, his heart racing, unable to distinguish between the vision and reality. Padme slept peacefully beside him, unaware of the torment that consumed her husband. Anakin knew he couldn't ignore these signs. The Force was trying to show him something, a future he needed to prevent at any cost. But how? How could he save the woman he loved when he didn't even fully understand what threatened to take her from him? The uncertainty ate at him from within, turning every waking moment into a battle against fear. The next morning, Anakin sought out Master Yoda. The great Jedi received him in his chambers, his ancient eyes studying the young knight with that millennial wisdom that seemed to penetrate to the soul. "Disturbed you are, young Skywalker," said Yoda, his calm voice echoing in the silence of the room. Anakin hesitated for a moment before revealing his nightmares, omitting only the crucial detail that the person in danger was Padme. Yoda listened in silence, nodding his head slightly. "Careful you must be with visions of the future. Always in motion, the future is. Attach yourself to these visions, you must not." Anakin felt frustration growing inside him. How could he not attach himself when it was about the life of someone so important? Yoda continued, "But seek answers in the Force you can. Meditate deeply, must you? Show the way, the Force will, if listen you know how." The Master's words offered hope, however tenuous. Perhaps through a deeper connection with the Force, Anakin could find the answers he so desperately sought. That night, Anakin began his meditation. He sat on the floor of his apartment in Coruscant, legs crossed, hands resting on his knees. Padme watched him from the bedroom door, concern etched on her face. "Ani, are you sure you're all right?" she asked softly. Anakin briefly opened his eyes, forcing a reassuring smile. "I'm fine, my love. I just need to concentrate for a while." Padme didn't seem convinced, but respected his space, withdrawing to the bedroom. Anakin closed his eyes again, plunging into the depths of the Force. Hours passed. The night deepened, and still he remained motionless, his consciousness wandering the invisible paths of the energy that permeated the entire galaxy. It was then that it happened. Like lightning piercing the darkness, a vision exploded in his mind with frightening clarity. The vision was different from anything Anakin had experienced before. It wasn't confused fragments or images distorted by time. It was sharp, precise, inevitable. He saw himself doing something that made his blood run cold. The scene unfolded like a prophecy carved in stone. There was only one path, a single action that could save Padme from the approaching death. But what the Force showed him was so terrible, so unimaginable, that Anakin felt his stomach turn. And he saw Padme, alive, safe, surviving childbirth because the single dark action had prevented the cascade of events that would lead to her death. Anakin abruptly opened his eyes, horrified with himself. His hands trembled uncontrollably. "No," he whispered to the emptiness of the apartment. I can't do this." The revelation had left him completely shaken. How could the Force, which should represent light and balance, demand something so dark? How could it show him a path that involved something so brutal? Anakin stood up staggering, his legs weak after hours of intense meditation. He looked at the bedroom where Padme slept, feeling the crushing weight of the knowledge he now carried. He couldn't tell her. How would he explain that the only way to save her involved committing an atrocity? Padme would never understand. She would question the vision, doubt its origin, and try to convince him there was another way. But Anakin knew, with a certainty that pierced his soul, that there wasn't. The Force had spoken, and its message was clear, however terrifying it might be. The following days were a silent torment for Anakin. He participated in the Jedi Council meetings as if in a trance. He sat among the great masters Yoda, Mace Windu, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Plo Koon, Mundi. But his mind was distant, trapped in the image of that terrible vision. "Your opinion on the situation in Kashyyyk, what is it, Anakin?" asked Yoda during one of the meetings. Anakin blinked, realizing he hadn't heard anything of the discussion. "I'm sorry, Master. I was distracted." Obi-Wan cast him a worried look, but said nothing in the presence of the other masters. Mace Windu, however, was not so discreet. "Your focus has been absent lately, Skywalker. This is unacceptable for a Jedi Knight." The words were harsh, but Anakin barely registered them. How could he concentrate on war strategies when he carried the knowledge of something so much more personal and devastating? How could he pretend everything was normal when he knew exactly what he would need to do to save the person he loved most? The meetings with Chancellor Palpatine became even more difficult to bear. The old politician had always been kind to Anakin, offering advice and support when the Jedi Council seemed too inflexible. But now each encounter was torture. Anakin sat in the luxurious office in Coruscant, trying to maintain a normal conversation while his mind screamed with the weight of the vision. "You seem troubled, my young friend," said Palpatine during one of their conversations, his eyes studying Anakin with that peculiar intensity. "Is there something you wish to share?" Anakin shook his head quickly, perhaps too quickly. "No, Chancellor. Just the stress of the war." Palpatine smiled, but there was something in that smile that made Anakin feel uncomfortable. It was as if the Chancellor could see through his lies, penetrating the defenses he had erected around his terrible secret. "War takes its toll on all of us," said Palpatine softly. "But remember, Anakin, that true leaders are those willing to make difficult choices when necessary." The missions became automatic. Anakin executed his tasks with his usual expertise, his lightsaber dancing in combat, his piloting as brilliant as it had always been. But R2-D2 noticed the changes in his master. The little droid whistled worriedly as he followed Anakin through the ship corridors. Obi-Wan also noticed. "Anakin, we need to talk," said his former master after a particularly dangerous mission. "You're not being yourself. What's going on?" Anakin wanted to confess, wanted to share the burden he carried. But how could he? Obi-Wan followed the Jedi Code rigorously. He would tell Anakin to release his attachment, to accept whatever fate brought. But Anakin couldn't do that. Not when it came to Padme. "I'm fine, Master," he replied, turning away to avoid Obi-Wan's penetrating gaze. "Just tired." It was a weak lie, and they both knew it. At night, lying beside Padme, Anakin watched her sleep. She was so beautiful, so peaceful, unconscious of the storm forming around her. He ran his fingers gently through her hair, memorizing every detail of her face. "I will protect you," he whispered in the dark. "No matter what it takes, I will keep you safe." Padme moved slightly, her eyes opening partially. "Ani," she murmured sleepily. "Is everything all right?" He forced himself to smile, kissing her forehead gently. "Everything's fine. Go back to sleep." But everything wasn't fine. Nothing was fine. And the more time passed, the more Anakin realized he was being forced into an impossible choice. Could he really commit the terrible act the Force had shown him? Would he be capable of crossing that line, of staining his hands with blood to save the woman he loved? Night after night, Anakin meditated with an intensity that bordered on obsession. The Force responded to his dedication, but not in the way he expected. Each time he dove into the depths of his consciousness, seeking alternatives, the Force showed him the same vision. Always the same sequence of events. Always the same terrible act. Always the same result. Padme alive. There were no variations, no other possibilities. It was as if the future were already written, and the Force was simply showing him the only path through it. The repetition of the vision should have accustomed him to the horror, but it didn't. Each time he saw those images, Anakin felt the same revulsion, the same visceral refusal to accept that this was necessary. "There must be another way," he would murmur to himself after each meditation. "There has to be." But deep in his heart, he knew there wasn't. As the weeks passed and Anakin intensified his connection with the Force, something unexpected began to happen. His powers began to grow in ways he had never experienced before. During a mission with Obi-Wan, He lifted objects with his telekinesis that would previously have required concentrated effort, now doing so with casual ease. "Impressive," commented Obi-Wan, surprised. "Your control has improved significantly." But it wasn't just his telekinesis. Anakin began to perceive thoughts around him, mental whispers that were previously beyond his reach. During council meetings, he could sense the emotions of those present with disconcerting clarity. Yoda's concern, Windu's distrust, Obi-Wan's unwavering loyalty. It was as if his intensified connection with the Force was unlocking abilities that had previously remained dormant. The Jedi could block him better, their trained minds erecting natural barriers, but other people were like open books. On a diplomatic mission, Anakin found himself able to sense the true intentions of a corrupt senator before the man even opened his mouth. "He's lying," said Anakin to Obi-Wan, his certainty absolute. "He plans to betray the Republic." Obi-Wan looked at him curiously. "How can you be so sure?" Anakin didn't know how to explain. He simply knew, and he was right. When confronted with evidence that Anakin guided them to find, the senator confessed everything. On the way back to Coruscant, Obi-Wan questioned his former Padawan. "Anakin, your powers are growing at an unusual rate. What exactly have you been doing in your meditations?" Anakin hesitated. Part of him wanted to tell Obi-Wan everything, confess about the visions, about the terrible path the Force was showing him. But another part knew that Obi-Wan wouldn't understand. No Jedi would understand. "Just following Master Yoda's advice," he finally replied. "Deepening my connection with the Force." It wasn't a lie, but it also wasn't the whole truth. The growth of his powers brought deeper understanding, but also more weight. Anakin began to perceive patterns in the Force, currents of destiny moving like invisible rivers. He could sense when important events were about to unfold. During a council meeting, while they discussed separatist troop movements, Anakin suddenly felt a disturbance. "They will attack the base," he said abruptly, interrupting Mace Windu. "Tomorrow at dawn." The masters looked at him with surprise. "Impressive audacity, making such a prediction is," said Yoda, but there was interest in his eyes. "Certain you are that correct you are?" Anakin nodded, absolutely certain. The Force had shown him, and he was correct. The attack came exactly as he predicted, but thanks to his warning, the Republic was prepared. After the battle, Yoda called him aside. "Strong in the Force you have become, young Skywalker, but careful you must be. Great power, great danger brings." Yoda's words echoed in Anakin's mind, but he couldn't stop now. His growing powers were the only thing that gave him hope that perhaps, just perhaps, he could find a way to save Padme without committing the terrible act the Force continued to show him. But as the days turned into weeks, as her belly grew visibly, Anakin felt time running out. The visions became more frequent, more urgent. He could feel the moment approaching, that point of convergence where he would be forced to choose. And with each passing day, the weight of that imminent choice became more unbearable. Padme noticed his growing anguish. "Ani, please, tell me what's wrong," she pleaded one night. "You're scaring me." Anakin held her, wishing he could tell everything, wishing he could share this burden. "I'm just afraid of losing you," he said, and at least that was a truth he could share. The answer came in a way that Anakin could never have predicted. It was during one of the seemingly routine meetings with Chancellor Palpatine. The Chancellor had summoned him to his office, as he frequently did, to discuss the war and Republic politics. But this time, the conversation took a completely different turn. "Have you ever heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?" asked Palpatine casually, as if commenting on the weather. Anakin froze. "A Sith? Why was the Chancellor talking about a Sith Lord?" "No," he replied cautiously, every one of his Jedi instincts going on maximum alert. Palpatine smiled, a smile that suddenly seemed much less friendly and much more predatory. "I thought not. It's not a story the Jedi would tell you. It's a Sith legend." And then he began to tell it, his hypnotic voice describing powers over life and death, the ability to influence the midichlorians to create life, to prevent those we love from dying. Anakin listened, his heart racing with each word. This was what he needed. This could save Padme without needing to commit the terrible act from the vision. "Is it possible to learn this power?" he asked, unable to hide the desperation in his voice. Palpatine studied him with those yellow eyes. "No, blue." Anakin blinked. For a moment, he swore he saw something different in those eyes. "Not from a Jedi," said Palpatine softly. The implication hung in the air between them like a serpent about to strike. Anakin felt his world begin to crumble and rebuild simultaneously. The Chancellor was offering to teach him, was saying there was another way, but then reality hit him like a bucket of cold water. The Chancellor knew a Sith legend. No, not just knew, was offering to teach, which meant, "You are a Sith Lord," said Anakin, his hand moving instinctively to his lightsaber. Palpatine didn't deny it, didn't try to dodge or deceive. Instead, he simply smiled, and this time there was nothing human in that smile. I am Darth Sidious, and I can teach you to save your wife from the certain death that approaches." Anakin stepped back, his world spinning out of control. Everything began to make sense. The war, the manipulations, both sides of the conflict. You orchestrated all of this." Palpatine inclined his head in agreement. "It was necessary to bring order to the galaxy. And now, Anakin, you have a choice to make. Join me, and together we can save Padme. We can bring peace to the galaxy." But then Anakin closed his eyes, and suddenly, everything clicked into place. The vision the Force had shown him repeatedly, the terrible act. He finally understood. "The Force showed me how to save Padme," said Anakin, his voice strangely calm. He opened his eyes, and there was a clarity in them that didn't exist before. "It showed me killing the Chancellor of the Republic." Palpatine recoiled slightly, surprise crossing his face for the first time. "What?" Anakin continued, the pieces finally falling into place in his mind. "I didn't understand. I thought the Force was asking me to do something dark, something against my nature. But that wasn't it. It was showing me the truth. You are the threat. You are what will cause Padme's death." In the vision, he had seen himself using Force lightning, something that shouldn't be possible for a Jedi. But now he understood. The Force was showing him not just what, but how. It was preparing him for this exact moment. Palpatine realized the danger too quickly. His eyes yellowed completely, all pretense of humanity disappearing. "So the Chosen One will truly fulfill the prophecy," he hissed. "But not without a fight." Palpatine's red saber exploded to life, the crimson blade illuminating the office with a sinister glow. He attacked with surprising speed for someone of such frail appearance, but Anakin was ready. His blue saber intercepted the strike, the two blades crackling where they met. "You cannot win, Anakin," roared Palpatine, attacking with a succession of quick strikes. "The dark side is more powerful than anything the Jedi can teach." They fought through the office, sabers humming through the air, furniture being shattered in their wake. Anakin used the Form 5 he had mastered, each strike precise, each movement calculated. But Palpatine was incredibly skilled, his centuries of experience evident in every movement. For a moment, it seemed the old Sith might actually win. Then Anakin remembered his meditations, how his powers had grown. He channeled the Force through himself, his movements becoming faster, stronger. With a powerful strike, Anakin broke Palpatine's defense. His saber cut through the hilt of the red saber, completely destroying it and making the crimson blade disappear. But Palpatine only laughed, a terrible and insane sound. "Impressive," he hissed. "But you forget who you're dealing with." His hands rose, and blue lightning exploded from his fingertips. The energy struck Anakin with devastating force, throwing him backward. His saber flew from his hands, sliding across the polished floor. The pain was unbelievable, every cell of his body seeming to burn. Palpatine advanced, the lightning continuing to pour from his hands. "You are powerful, young Skywalker, but not enough. Now you will die, and Padme will die with you." Anakin felt panic growing, but then something inside him ignited. The vision. In the vision, he had used lightning. But how? He had never learned. Instinctively, operating more from desperation than knowledge, Anakin raised his hands to defend himself from Palpatine's lightning. Something incredible happened. Instead of simply being electrocuted to death, the energy met his palms and was absorbed. No, not just absorbed, transformed. Anakin felt the Force flowing through him in a way he had never experienced before. It was as if all those days of intense meditation, all that deepened connection, had unlocked something fundamental within him. He wasn't using the dark side. He was using the Force in its purest state, channeling it through himself in a way that transcended the artificial divisions between light and darkness. Palpatine's expression changed from triumph to shock. "Impossible," he whispered, but it was possible, and Anakin was about to prove it. With a scream that echoed through the Force itself, Anakin released the energy he had accumulated. Lightning exploded from his hands, but it was different from Palpatine's. Where the Siths were blue and corrupt, Anakin's were white and pure, Force energy in its most elemental form. The lightning struck Palpatine with devastating force, hurling him against the wall. The old Sith tried to defend himself, tried to use his own powers to repel the attack, but it was useless. The power flowing through Anakin was too great, amplified by all those weeks of intense meditation, by his unique connection with the Force as the Chosen One. Palpatine screamed, his body writhing under the relentless assault. And then, finally, he was still. The Sith Lord was dead. Darth Sidious, who had manipulated the entire galaxy, who had started a war to seize power, was finished. Anakin lowered his hands trembling, barely believing what he had just done. The silence that followed was deafening. Anakin stood in the center of the destroyed office, looking at Palpatine's body, trying to process what had happened. He had killed. Not in battle, not in self-defense during the war, but deliberately with full knowledge and intention. And yet, he didn't feel as he thought he would. There was no darkness consuming him. There was no anger or hatred fueling his actions. There was only clarity. The Force had shown him this path for a reason. It wasn't an act of darkness, but of balance. Palpatine was the imbalance in the Force, the cancer spreading through the galaxy. And Anakin, as the Chosen One, had done what the prophecy always said he would do. He brought balance to the Force, identifying and destroying the Sith Lord who had thrown the galaxy into chaos. Suddenly, the doors burst open. Mace Windu rushed in, his saber already ignited, other Jedi behind him. They must have felt the disturbance in the Force. Windu stopped abruptly upon seeing the scene. His gaze went from Anakin to Palpatine's body, processing what had happened. "Skywalker," he said slowly, his saber still ignited. "What happened here?" Anakin turned to face the Jedi Master, his posture upright despite the exhaustion he felt. "The Chancellor was Darth Sidious," he said clearly. "He revealed himself to me, tried to convert me to the dark side. We fought, and I defeated him." The other Jedi entered the office, their gazes examining the carnage. Obi-Wan was among them, his eyes wide with shock. Yoda arrived last, leaning on his cane, his ancient eyes examining the scene with deep sadness. He approached Anakin, studying the young Jedi with that penetrating gaze that seemed to see through everything. "Fulfilled the prophecy you have, young Skywalker," said the old master softly. "Identified the Sith Lord and destroyed, you did. Balance to the Force you brought." There was weight in those words, recognition and something more, perhaps pride. Anakin felt his legs weaken. All the adrenaline that had sustained him during the fight was leaving his body. Obi-Wan caught him before he fell. "You did well, Anakin," said his former master, his voice laden with emotion. "You saved the Republic." But Anakin wasn't thinking about the Republic at that moment. He was thinking about Padme. He was thinking about how the Force had shown him this path, this single terrible path he had feared so much to fulfill, and how now she would be safe. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. Palpatine's death sent shockwaves through the Republic. The revelation that the Chancellor was actually a Sith Lord, that he had orchestrated the entire war for his own ends, was devastating. A new government needed to be formed quickly. Senator Bail Organa of Alderaan assumed a temporary leadership role, working with the Jedi Council to stabilize the situation. The Separatist forces, deprived of their secret leadership, began to crumble. Peace negotiations were initiated. The war that had consumed the galaxy for years was finally beginning to end. And amidst all this chaos, Anakin remained by Padme's side. She had gone into labor 2 days after Palpatine's death, and Anakin held her hand throughout the entire process, remembering the vision that had tormented him so much, the death he had prevented. When the twins were born, Luke and Leia, healthy and crying loudly, Anakin felt tears rolling down his face. 2 weeks after the twins' birth, Anakin was summoned before the Jedi Council. He entered the circular chamber, the Master's seats forming a circle around him. Yoda was in his usual place, Mace Windu beside him, Obi-Wan, Plo Koon, Ki-Adi-Mundi, all the great Masters present. Anakin Skywalker, began Mace Windu, his voice formal. You have been called here today so that the Council may recognize your actions. You identified and destroyed Darth Sidious, fulfilling the prophecy of the Chosen One. You brought balance to the Force and saved the Republic from a tyrant. There was a pause, loaded with meaning. Then Windu continued, and Anakin could hear something he never expected to hear in the stern Master's voice. Respect. For these acts, and in recognition of your extraordinary growth in the Force, this Council grants you the rank of Jedi Master. Anakin felt shock course through his body. Master, after everything he had been through, after all the years of frustration and resentment at being denied the rank, now it was being granted. Deserved. This recognition is, said Yoda, his eyes meeting Anakin's. Understand the Force in ways few do. You have come to. Challenging your journey was, but wiser you have become. Anakin knelt, accepting the honor with a humility he hadn't felt before. Thank you, Masters, he said simply. Obi-Wan smiled, pride evident on his face. After the ceremony, when the other Masters had departed, Obi-Wan approached Anakin. I'm proud of you, Anakin, he said, placing a hand on his former Padawan's shoulder. I know there were times when I doubted you, times when I was too hard, but you proved to be everything Qui-Gon Jinn saw in you that day on Tatooine. The words touched Anakin deeply. I couldn't have gotten here without you, Master, he said. You taught me everything. Obi-Wan shook his head. I taught the techniques, but the wisdom, the strength of character to make the right choice at the most important moment, that came from you. That night, Anakin returned to his apartment in Coruscant. Padme was in the living room, cradling Luke while Leia slept in her crib. She looked up when he entered, a smile lighting up her face. How did it go? She asked. Anakin sat beside her, looking at the sun in her arms. I was named Jedi Master, he said, still barely believing it. Padme kissed him softly. I always knew you'd get there, she said. You're the most incredible man I know. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching their children. And for the first time in months, Anakin allowed himself to simply be in the moment, without fear of the future, without the weight of terrible visions. The Force had shown him a path, a terrifying path he had resisted with every fiber of his being. But in the end, it was the right path. It hadn't been about darkness or light, about good or evil. It had been about balance, about making the impossible choice when the entire galaxy depended on it. Peace had returned to the galaxy, and with it, peace had come to Anakin Skywalker's heart. The nightmares had completely ceased. The visions of Padme's death no longer haunted him. He had saved her, not through dark power or manipulation, but through the courage to follow the path the Force had illuminated, no matter how terrible it seemed. Years later, when Luke and Leia were children running through the corridors of the Jedi Temple, when peace was a reality and not just a distant hope, Anakin sometimes thought about those dark days. He thought about how he had come so close to the abyss, how easily he could have fallen if he had chosen the path Palpatine offered instead of what the Force showed. He never told anyone, not even Padme, about the intense meditations, about the weeks of torment as he struggled with the knowledge of what he would need to do. It was his burden to carry, his journey to complete, and he had completed it. He was the chosen one. And finally, truly, he had brought balance to the Force.